Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling those new tethered caps you see on plastic bottles, the
Right.
ones that can be a little fiddly to open sometimes.
Yeah.
We're going to explore why this small change is creating such a buzz.
Hmm.
We've got articles, research, even international perspectives,
Wow.
and we're here to help you understand what's most important.
It's amazing how such a simple design tweak can connect to global issues like plastic pollution.
Yeah,
We'll be examining why these tethered caps are causing such a stir
right.
and what it all means for the future of sustainability.
It's funny, I never really gave much thought to those little caps until I started seeing them everywhere.
It's easy to overlook them, but detached bottle caps are a bigger problem than you might think.
Really?
They're small and easily end up as litter.
Hmm.
In fact, UK surveys found they're the third most common type of waste found on beaches.
Wow, the third most common.
Yeah,
It's a lot of bottle caps.
it is.
It's pretty shocking when you think about it, but what's the big deal about some plastic caps ending up in the environment? Isn't it just an eyesore?
It's more than just an aesthetic issue. Those tiny caps pose a real threat to marine life
Okay.
because they're so buoyant they can travel vast distances,
Oh, wow.
often ending up in the stomachs of seabirds and other animals who mistake them for food.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So these seemingly harmless little caps are actually contributing to a pretty major problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wildlife photographer Chris Jordan has done some powerful work documenting this.
Oh, really?
He captured images of Midway Atoll,
Okay.
a remote island in the Pacific, absolutely covered in the bodies of seabirds.
Oh, gosh.
When they examined the birds, their stomachs were full of plastic, and a significant portion of it was, you guessed it, plastic bottle caps.
That's heartbreaking. It really makes you realize the impact our actions can have, even on creatures thousands of miles away.
Right.
So how are tethered caps supposed to address this?
The idea is simple. If the cap is attached, it's much less likely to become separated from the bottle and end up as litter.
Makes sense. So are these tethered caps mandatory everywhere now?
The European Union has actually implemented new regulations requiring manufacturers to use tethered caps.
Interesting.
It's a move toward more responsible design.
I'm curious, have you noticed any changes in your behavior since you started using bottles with tethered caps?
You know, it's funny you should ask that. I have noticed that I'm more aware of the whole process of opening and disposing of the bottle.
Okay.
Before it was just mindless twist, toss, and done.
Right.
But now I have to pay a little more attention, which I think makes me more likely to dispose of it properly.
That's a great point, and it brings us to an interesting aspect of this whole tethered cap situation, the potential for design to influence behavior.
I'm interested to hear more about that. You mean like how the design of everyday objects can subtly nudge us towards making better choices?
Exactly. Think about those refrigerators that beep if the door's left open too long.
That annoying sound encourages us to close the door and conserve energy.
Right.
It's a small design element, but it can have a real impact on our behavior.
That's a great example. And it seems like there's a historical precedent for this sort of thing too, right? Didn't something similar happen with soda cans?
You're thinking about the redesign of metal drink can ring pulls back in the 1980s?
Yeah.
They used to detach completely from the can, just like those old bottle caps,
Right.
but they were redesigned to stay attached for similar reasons.
Right. To reduce litter. It's amazing how these seemingly small design tweaks can have such a widespread impact. So these tethered caps can help with the litter problem. But what about recycling? I mean, I always try to recycle my plastic bottles, but do those tiny caps actually get recycled even when they're not tethered?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another interesting aspect of this discussion.
Okay.
Even if you're diligent about tossing those loose caps into the recycling bin, they can still cause problems. The machinery in many recycling plants struggles to sort those tiny caps, so they often end up being sent to landfill anyway.
So even when we try to do the right thing, our efforts can be undermined by something as small as a bottle cap? It
Yeah.
seems like the tethered caps could help address that issue too.
Exactly. Tethered caps are much easier for recycling plants to process because they stay attached to the bottles.
Okay.
This means they're much more likely to actually get recycled. It's a win-win, less litter, and better recycling rates.
That's great. It really highlights the power of thoughtful design.
Mhm.
But all this talk about design influencing behavior has me thinking,
Yeah,
could there be a psychological impact from these tethered caps as well?
that's a fascinating question. For decades, we've been conditioned to simply twist off a bottle cap and toss it aside without a second thought.
Right.
Now with these tethered caps, that routine is disrupted.
Uh-huh.
We're forced to pause, even if just for a second, and think about what we're doing.
It makes the act of opening a bottle a little more conscious, I suppose. Do you think that could lead to more mindful behavior in other areas as well?
It's certainly possible. It's like a gentle reminder that our actions have consequences. It might even spark a thought. If I'm being more mindful about this little cap, maybe I should be more mindful about other things too.
So maybe these tethered caps aren't just a practical solution to a waste management problem, but also a catalyst for a shift in mindset.
Precisely. And that shift in mindset is essential if we're going to create a more sustainable future.
It's all about making those connections between our everyday actions and the bigger picture. Of course, not everyone is thrilled about these tethered caps. Have you heard any criticisms or concerns about them?
You're right, there are some dissenting voices. Some argue that they're just a band-aid solution to a much larger problem.
I can see that point. We can't rely on tethered caps alone to solve the entire plastic pollution crisis.
Absolutely. Ultimately, we need to reduce our overall plastic consumption and invest in better waste management systems. Tethered caps are just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Another argument I've heard is that they might actually discourage people from recycling.
That's an interesting perspective. Some people find them annoying and inconvenient.
Yeah.
You might get frustrated and just toss the whole bottle in the trash instead of bothering to recycle it.
It's a reminder that even well-intentioned design changes can have unintended consequences. Clear communication and education are crucial to ensure these changes have the desired positive impact.
Couldn't agree more. People need to understand why these tethered caps are being implemented and how to use them properly. What stands out to you most from all this?
I think what strikes me the most is how much complexity there is in something as seemingly simple as a bottle cap. It really highlights the interconnectedness of everything. Design behavior, the environment. It's a microcosm of our relationship with the planet.
It's fascinating how something so small can spark such a wide-ranging discussion, isn't it? It's a reminder that every action we take, no matter how small, has an impact.
It makes you realize that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future, even through seemingly insignificant choices, like using a bottle with a tethered cap.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question. What does this all mean for you, the listener, in your everyday life?
It seems like it's a call to action to be more mindful of our choices and our impact on the environment.
To embrace those tethered caps, even if they are a little annoying at first.
To look for opportunities to reduce our plastic consumption and support companies that are committed to sustainability.
To start those conversations with our friends and family about how we can all do our part to protect the planet.
And to remember that even small changes can make a big difference when we all work together. It's empowering to think that we can all be agents of change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the tethered bottle cap is a powerful symbol of that possibility. It's about making conscious choices in our everyday lives and recognizing that those choices have ripple effects.
It's about staying curious and engaged in the ongoing conversation about sustainability, because together we can create a better world, one tethered cap at a time.
And trust. Well said. On that note, let's shift gears slightly and consider the bigger picture for a moment.
Okay.
Well, what might be considered a sustainable solution today could become outdated or even problematic down the road.
That's a good point. Technology changes, our understanding of the environment evolves.
Right.
And new challenges emerge.
Exactly. So it's crucial to stay informed and be open to new ideas and approaches.
It's about staying flexible and adapting to new information and circumstances.
Absolutely. That's the key to making real progress.
So what does that mean for tethered bottle caps specifically? Could there be a day when they're no longer the best solution?
It's certainly possible. Maybe we'll develop new materials that are even more easily recyclable or biodegradable. Or perhaps we'll move away from single-use plastic bottles altogether.
Imagine a world without plastic bottles. What would we drink out of?
It might sound far-fetched, but there are already companies working on innovative alternatives, like edible water bottles and plant-based packaging.
Wow, edible water bottles. That's amazing. It really makes you wonder what the future holds.
It's an exciting time to be thinking about sustainability.
Yeah.
There are so many possibilities on the horizon.
So while tethered bottle caps might be a step in the right direction for now, they're likely just one chapter in a much larger story.
Exactly. The conversation continues, and it's up to all of us to stay engaged and keep pushing for progress.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I'd say it's this: never underestimate the power of small actions. Even something as simple as choosing a bottle with a tethered cap can make a difference.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future, and that even small changes can add up to something significant.
It's about being mindful staying curious, and recognizing that our everyday choices have the power to shape the world around us.
And on that note, it's time to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those bottle caps tethered. We've been deep diving into the world of tethered bottle caps.
Yep.
Exploring their impact on the environment and even our own behavior.
It's remarkable how such a seemingly small thing can open up so many avenues of discussion, isn't it?
It really is. And speaking of opening things up, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What about the bigger picture here? Is there anything else about tethered bottle caps we should be considering?
That's a great question, and it highlights an important point. The conversation about sustainability is always evolving.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what might be considered a sustainable solution today
Okay.
could become outdated or even problematic down the road.
That's a good point. Technology changes, our understanding of the environment evolves, and new challenges emerge.
Exactly. So it's crucial to stay informed and be open to new ideas and approaches.
It's about staying flexible and adapting to new information and circumstances.
Absolutely. That's the key to making real progress.
So what does that mean for tethered bottle caps specifically? Could there be a day when they're no longer the best solution?
It's certainly possible. Maybe we'll develop new materials that are even more easily recyclable or biodegradable.
Okay.
Or perhaps we'll move away from single-use plastic bottles altogether.
Imagine a world without plastic bottles. What would we drink out of?
It might sound far-fetched, but there are already companies working on innovative alternatives, like edible water bottles and plant-based packaging.
Wow, edible water bottles. That's amazing. It really makes you wonder what the future holds.
It's an exciting time to be thinking about sustainability. There are so many possibilities on the horizon.
So while tethered bottle caps might be a step in the right direction for now, they're likely just one chapter in a much larger story.
Exactly. The conversation continues, and it's up to all of us to stay engaged and keep pushing for progress.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I'd say it's this. Never underestimate the power of small actions. Even something as simple as choosing a bottle with a tethered cap can make a difference.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future, and that even small changes can add up to something significant.
It's about being mindful, staying curious, and recognizing that our everyday choices have the power to shape the world around us.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive into tethered caps. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It was great being here.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those bottle caps tethered.